forward now. Here we go. So the community can watch half and read all the notes. So go ahead, Linda.
See, John, those are really exciting ideas. I really like this conversation. And I wanted to just go back, Andy, if you can pull that agenda you have for that evening back up. I think we can combine two things. If you start at the beginning, whoever's controlling this housing conversation. Okay. So I think we can combine, we have 30 minutes for networking. That can be combined with the reflections. Maybe combine those two things in that half hour. We need more time, I think, to present and present beyond challenges. We need to have something about imagining, exciting housing, imagining, I really like that second title too, livable Sedona. That kind of thing is sounding very, very nice. But then you can have, and that to me, that's the key to having somebody there who can do a presentation about how towns that have been in a suburban model, small towns, have redeveloped their main street into this new model. It can create housing. It can, but more than that, even more than that, it will present opportunities for locals to enjoy. It would be more shops, maybe more restaurants, more gathering places. We all need that. Maybe more walkability. That's the kind of thing that we want somebody to show, that linkage between this. So this new development isn't a new way of thinking, isn't a threat to what we love about Sedona, but an enhancement.
Right. So thank you, Linda. To be actually, I don't want to take a break. We're doing so well. Is everybody good? Just rolling with this for a little while. Are we good? Or does anybody need to? Okay. So the reflections portion was intended to be, and this is where we don't have to do it. The reflections portion was intended to be reflections about the challenges, right? Maybe we don't need that. And what you're suggesting though, is some of these key questions could be built into the interactive soft start. So it is really important to have kind of an interactive soft start, because that's where a lot of the learning happens too. People get to meet one another. Like we saw that was a really good way to start the meeting. So I guess the question is, how important, and the other thing I heard is that what Anne brought up is we really need to have some conversations that are like at heart center, right? And so trying to get people into that mode relatively quickly so that when we get to these harder things to grapple with. And so just as a reminder, Linda, these sort of questions, what people would just turn to their neighbor after listening to the challenges presented. That's what the intention was there, but we don't have to stick with that. That's up to you all. And there's too many there. First of all, we wouldn't ask 6 questions in 15 minutes. Those were just teasers. It was more just this like, oh my gosh, turn to your neighbor. Did you know that there are people living in cars? Did you know that there's such a shortage, that people want that kind of thing. And also highlighting that the tone really, this is the part that sets the stage, is to acknowledge that there are challenges. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I just realized that I had the clap hand instead of the raise hand earlier.
Well, we so appreciated the.
So excited.
Sorry.
Someone said.
Exuberance is underrated, Cynthia. Go ahead. Do you have a question, or are you clapping?
Well, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of you or not, but I was just going to talk a little bit more about the scenario segments and the Legos and stuff.
Sure.
Right.
Even though I said we didn't need to cut a break, I'm going to step away for a minute and Carrie will take over. I'll be right back.
Okay, so I just wanted to explain a little more on how we might do this scenario planning. We would have a big map on the table, and we would have these maps prepared in such a way so that which properties out there are maybe vacant, undeveloped, have the potential to be redeveloped, etc. And then you would have your pile of Legos that would be correlated to certain densities, certain heights, etc. So that's where I think we get into the examples that were brought up earlier, like West Sedona along the highway. That's where people can start, if they want to put their Legos there. So anyway, that's where we would bring kind of the real life map of different parcels in the city, some of which are either prime for redevelopment or they're vacant. And then you could see how it might look if you mapped them out with different uses. So that was just kind of a quick recap on how that might work.
Yeah, and thank you for that clarification, Cynthia. We had talked about, making this as interactive and making, the Legos be representative. Each type of thing is a different color, so that people can see this would be retail with housing above. This would be a single family. This would be duplexes. This would be multi-family, so people could understand what they were placing where, and they could have an indication of height, of density within the context of what's available.
So my real hand has a question. So I still people love to play on boards. People love to do stuff like this. My question would be, I don't know, now that I'm thinking through all of this robust dialogue that we'd like to get into, and still maybe small group discussions, would this scenario planning be just as good as an active exercise when people are arriving? Like how much, I don't know, like, because what it might illustrate that it's not easy. Like right when maybe would it be better earlier in the evening rather than ending with it? It might be really great to end with innovative solutions in terms of excitement of people leaving. I don't know, just a thought.
I mean, maybe you start with that, and then after they see what's possible, allow, some time to change it at the end. I don't know.
I think it needs enough explanation that you don't want to do it right off the bat, but maybe it is a good idea. Actually, it is a good idea if it's before they talk potential strategies.
Yeah.
Unless some of these potential strategies are going to explain enough to them that they can actually physically show what that looks like.
That's true, because they'd be more informed.
Can I suggest, whatever we do, let's just not make sure that we've devolved this into like a game and we're just occupying them. I mean, this is a big deal problem for this city that we have to get the citizens to come along with. And I'm not sure there shouldn't be some drama in this, like, a big opening statement of, excuse my language, but we've been screwed by the state. We have lost significant affordable housing to short-term rentals that we can do nothing about. We need to solve that problem, or we need to bus everybody elsewhere. So we're here to help solve this problem tonight. That said in a more diplomatic tone, I think kind of gets people sitting back in their seats. So that we cannot come out of this deal that everybody rejects everything. And,
right.
We even have people who are now out trying to make sure we have, the amphitheater back in place. And, the city's just spent all these millions of dollars just to recoup an idea that never worked. So I want to, get that out there, get some kind of very serious discussion going, and get it out on the table that now is the time in our history of a city to grow up and solve some of these issues that have not been solved just because all we've done is done land splits, build this and that here or there. You know, there's been no rhyme or reason to 89A. We all know that. Cynthia is probably one of the few who fully understand that for all intents and purposes, our future land use map is just a duplication of the zoning map. And so if we want to put some strength in this, our future land use map has to have some significant change in it.
John, I want to just add to John's emotional side.
Be diplomatic. So I'm going to stop there and not dominate more.
I think, John, I agree, getting the emotion going, reminding them, have you gone to the Walgreens and the pharmacy's only open certain hours because there's not enough employees? And and this store is closed and this restaurant's closed, where it's actually impacting us. So
Yeah, so I think that I would like to propose, and I'm going to propose, these stories are so important. And I think, something that we often do when we open a meeting is have a representative group welcome the group. And I would really love to invite you all to be part of the welcome, to stand in front of your community, to share little snippets within, 30 seconds to a minute on why you think this is important. So little vignettes, like you just said, Anne, John, it was pretty diplomatic. I don't think anybody would argue, but I would really like that if a subset or even all of you would be willing to share a little story about why this is so important to kind of set the tone for the meeting. I think that would be really powerful. So think about that. This is your formal ask. Because when you do that, the community sees someone, it's not just the city that's like ramming housing down their throat for the 14th time, or these are your community members. And so I think honestly, we should do that as a practice for these next few community sessions.
I love the story about having to drive to Cottonwood because there aren't enough kids here to play in sports. I mean, that hit me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if we did a video of some sort?
What would Mike say?
It's like, I can do that unless, of course.
Mike, we'll make sure that you don't have laryngitis that night when you're asked to speak.
I mean, maybe Keegan can do like quick, not to put it on Keegan, sorry, Keegan, quick videos of us, so we can have short statements about examples of how it's impacted us.
Yeah, kind of like we did before the community forum, kind of an advertisement, like a story. I love it. Okay.
When are we thinking of doing, when is this going to happen?
Well,
Great question.
great question, Linda. We have some late dates here that made Cynthia a little uncomfortable. However, what we'd like to do, if possible, is plan a couple of these in sequence. They take a lot of energy to plan, and then they're over, and then we have to, not we, but the collective. So if we could plan a couple of them in tandem, the next one potentially being the balancing the environment and tourism, of which Anne, is already having these conversations. And so some of the outputs of that might be really helpful as well. So we were thinking of having them a couple weeks apart. We, as parents who are facilitating this process, have a big chunk of March from about the 10th through the 19th, where we will be gone for spring break. And I don't know when Sedona's spring break is as well, but March is a bit of a tricky one. So one proposal, what's that?
Same time.
Okay. So one proposal is that we spend the good time that we have now, and it doesn't mean we don't continue there's been a lot of desire to keep grinding through content and having these great conversations like today, but that we plan for two of them potentially last week in March and then first part of April. Is that so? Cynthia, when you were nervous, how nervous are you about waiting that long?
Feel free to clap.
I like the idea if we could do a series, just to kind of not spread them out too far. Because
Yes.
sooner we get some of this feedback, the sooner we can be moving forward on coming up with our recommendations, et cetera.
Right, so I think
I'm gonna go back to
when
this
we had looked at our
previous work thing.
it was, you know, what we were thinking is if we started in late March, we would be done with 3 by the end of April. So, you know, every 2 weeks was kind of what we thought, like, we had done the last one on a Wednesday evening. It seemed to have great turnout. If we could do that similar thing, recognizing there might be city council, because sometimes that changes, whatever works for the schedule of important events in Sedona, but having them sequentially where we do one, have a week to regroup, find some lessons learned, tweak the next one. Recognizing if something went really well, we could tweak the next one to have a similar component, or the inverse, right? Maybe it didn't work so well, let's change something. And then do the next one, have another week to regroup, and then do the next one. So it'd be like 6 weeks with 3 workshops. Was an idea.
And the original workshops.
Okay.
The original workshops, which were here, was this balancing the environment and tourism, which I think we're keyed up to kind of think about next. As we've been having these discussions, housing and tourism have really continued to be the 2 that rise to the surface. We spent a lot of time talking about that at the partner workshop. So let's enlist them to help us. We told them we'd be back in touch with them. Let's enlist them to come back around. And then what we talked about, then we've got this, which is now has a much better title, but it has to do with housing and land use. And then we thought it would be really wonderful to end the workshop sort of series. And this doesn't mean that there won't be focus groups that come out of this that really have to grind through this. But we thought that ending it with this celebrating community event would be great. And we get back to Mary's wonderful idea about having music and talking about culture and the arts. And so whether that's like the 3rd one, or maybe we wait on that one and really do that when we have a draft of the plan, but either way, having like a celebration of the community in and of itself. So that's our current thinking. Can we roll with that and take your comments from, it's only 4:30, we got more time. Good deal.
So it looks thank you for the comments, both Marcy and Mike, about timing. It looks like from Mike's perspective, a 5 to 7:30 works better, especially, does that work better for in your realm as well, Marcy, as far as work days and potential kiddo shuffle or other commitments?
Yeah, I mean, when we've had XYZ events, that was a comment that we got all the time, that it was really difficult to get out of work early for events like these. So just passing that along if you want working people to be able to come.
Yeah, and I think we had tried that last time. I think we said that there was like the come get refreshments at 4:30 and the event started at 5 at the SPAC, and it was well attended. Recognizing there was a whole contingent of folks that showed up at 4:15, it took us a little off guard.
All right, so I think let's keep, I mean, is everybody okay with that approach? Planning at least 2, so tightening this agenda by continued discussion today. We do have some council members and maybe a member from the public that we want to make sure at 4:50 we stop and entertain their thoughts and questions. And then beginning to think about the framework of the balancing of the environment and tourism. And that one has a nice ring to it, but we don't necessarily need to keep that title either. And Anne, we'd love to enlist you and whoever else is interested in kind of getting a head start on what that might look like as well. And then should we just hit pause on the grand finale for the community, celebrating community until we know, just let's kick that can just a tiny bit down the road in terms of getting these 2 slightly more complicated ones, I think, under us.
Can I just add a couple
Always.
small
Yeah.
comments about wording?
Yes.
I know that this is our internal working document, which is obviously available to the public, but in terms of what we market and the agenda that we share for the actual event, just words like height and density, I'm totally fine with those words, but they can be, they can stir up emotions, and whatever you say about imagining the beautiful future will get people upset. So I think leaving it to words like imagine
Yeah.
and those type of things would be better than putting agenda scenario number 2, height and density. Everybody's
No.
gonna,
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
that's, if talking about emotions, it's gonna fire up the emotions.
Yeah, and this is what we call a facilitator agenda, where we're just really
Okay.
grinding through
Yep.
all of the nuances and details. But thank you for that, Marcy, and we'll rely on you and like you and Keegan and others who are experts on this to make sure that we're messaging it correctly. So we don't have this totally fleshed out yet, but I also would be good to scratch the surface, I think, on marketing for this. And so Keegan, we talked about, I think it would be great to both have some little snippets from the work group about the challenge of housing, these shared stories that could be part of the promotional materials like it was for the community forum. And I think it would be good to have your faces really welcome the community as part of the opening of the event itself. Is everyone okay with that proposal? If you're not, speak up.
Also, Andy, I mean, it might be nice too, like we said, to have some people who are, the stakeholders in the video. That would be nice to have somebody who is, would love to live in the community, who works at our communities. I mean, I'd love to hear some of those voices and see some of those faces.
Right. So kind of like last time, we didn't have all of the work group say
Right.
something for the pitch of the community forum. So certainly, Linda, with your engagement in the city's group that I always forget the name of, but so important, we need to have you say something. And then, Mike and Marcy and Monica, the triple M's are all parents in the community too. So one or all of you guys could duke that out in terms of providing an example. We certainly have heard a lot of those examples along the way.
Well, I mean, I might regret saying this. It might be a worthwhile engagement type campaign to reach out to people on social media to have them record videos about how they've been impacted.
Love it.
That's a cool idea.
Love.
You're gonna get, the whole spectrum of feedback. But I mean, if you really want to put faces on it, it's
Yeah,
definitely
like
not
a
just
housing question of the day. It might be cool to flesh out this.
every single person, if they have not been affected by it personally, knows somebody who has.
Yeah.
So
And
people
I'd
will
like
have,
businesses.
And I want to propose Anne, because I love what she said today, that she used to think, why can't they just live outside the city, and how she's changed on that. I think that's really key, because a lot of people will resonate with that.
well, I mean, just even having the word diverse, we know what diverse communities mean, but there's a lot of implications of that word. And it's, having a diverse community is scary to people, right?
I don't know
So-
if it's scary. It's just, it may not be an objective in itself unless you tell me what the benefit of it is. What about business owners? Shouldn't they be part of the needs videos?
How about,
Yes.
I'm saying this facetiously, but how about someone from Walgreens speaking to why they can't pay their employees a livable wage when they made $22 billion profit last year, and the same with Safeway, and the same with Whole Foods. There's two sides to this equation. We're trying to house
Good.
those that work for companies that are making gross profits and exporting them out of town.
Well, if we can get the landowners and developers and investors to speak too about what they might do, that, I mean, if we want to be representative of all of the stakeholders, that's another viewpoint that can be represented.
And I see Keegan ferociously taking notes on this. So thank you, Keegan. Can you remind us? I mean, I think we had some good sort of parameters for time and how many people. Like last video was awesome. It was great, you know, the timing was great. How many people did we have talk? How long was it?
The video was about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and I believe I had 4 people from the work group speak in the video. Some parts were much shorter than others. And then I also got the whole work group saying something in unison, like, have your voice heard, or I don't know, something like that. But
What was it?
it went
What was it?
over well, and a lot of people shared it. So I'd love to get some different voices in it. I love all the ideas that everyone's saying right now. That's a great ideas.
Amy, I'd like to hear from our group to just see how they feel about so far, how this looks, you know, I mean, are we going to be able, I mean, are we going deep enough for them to be able to feel like they have you know, been informed and they've been able to imagine as well as participate?
Thank you for asking that question.
To me, if they leave just realizing that we really need to do something about it, we've been successful. If they don't, then we haven't.
So there's a way to weave back if we decide to do this, which it got some excitement, I think, if we decide to do these elicitive questions on social media as well, there's a way to share that back, either as part of the soft, you know, on a screen or as part of this reflections, you know, because sometimes when you have a community meeting, you get a certain segment of the community that addresses it on social media, and then you may have a totally different group show up. And so we need to be able to utilize that in terms of, well, thank you for sharing that. That's in alignment with what we've been hearing on social media, or thank you for sharing that. There's also these thoughts that have come in. So I think finding a way to weave that into the evening would be important as well. Mary, I just wanted to offer you some space and time to share your thoughts if you had anything that was coming up in your mind.
I think there have been a lot of great ideas shared. I really appreciate the telling it like it is messages. I think, you know, Anne's example of just short and sweet, you know, why we care. And to Linda's, I agree with Linda that Anne's message about, I didn't never think I was going to change on this would be good, because I do think a lot of people, anyway, I guess I'm just learning a lot listening today, and I think you're going in the right direction. So that's all I have to say.
Well, we'll keep going in this direction. We'll think through the scenario part a little more. Mike, let's pause for a moment, because poor Mike, you told me he already ordered a new microphone. But take a minute to read Mike's thoughts and respond by voice, because he can hear you. Thanks, Mike. Do we have a few more minutes, 10 more, or do we want to just go forth with, we will revise this agenda, put a little more meat on it, probably reach out to some of you, I guess a formal invitation and an acceptance here would be great before we bother you, but Linda and John, city doesn't get to decide, but Linda and John, are you willing to help us with some of the presentation content?
Sure.
Think through who else would either present if it's not you, but we welcome your thoughts and being presenters as well. Okay, we'll probably reach out to you directly then to kind of put some meat on the bones of these presentations.
We do have other items on the agenda, right? That I want to make sure we get to today.
You're right, we do. Although we kind of knew that this would get to here. And Carrie's got to take off in 5 minutes, but the other part of the agenda And we don't have time to really do it a lot of service to, but it includes like, what do we move to next, right? So Cynthia, do you want to give us just a quick, let's go ahead and get, she made a face. Let's go ahead and get a quick status update, because I think it's important to remind everybody of like, whether we did it exactly right or not, we have covered a lot of content that is in the existing plan and what remains. We have a commitment now to doing at least one other additional forum that tackles tourism and the environment for sure. But Cynthia, go ahead and share what you had planned to share.
Okay, I'll be really quick. What we've been working on, actually came up today in discussion. We've got some really cool maps that we're working with GIS on. And that's the reason they're not quite ready right now, because I would have showed you, is we're still working on it. And that's how we're coming up with our updated and hopefully very accurate numbers on things like our build out. For example, commercials like 87% built out. So we've got maps, for example, of all the vacant property. We have a whole series of maps that are very interesting and that we can use at the community forums. So there's that. Quick update on city staffing changes. Some of this does kind of influence our community forum discussions. For example, sustainability. Alicia Peck is no longer with the city. Economic development, Molly Spangler is no longer with the city. She moved over to Camp Verde. And then as far as new staff, we do have a new community development director, and it's Steve Mertes, who was our chief building official, who's been with the city for quite a while now. So that's a really quick update.
Any questions for Cynthia? And then, the remainder of the agenda focused on like, what are we doing in terms of these other topics? Tony also brought up a really good point last time, which I feel like we're moving a little bit into already in terms of really honing in on who would be working on things. I guess a proposal that I would suggest, so we have a conflict for a meeting 1 month from now in person. It falls right in the middle of spring break, which it sounds like Marcy, your Sedona's is at the same time. So could we propose another meeting 2 weeks from today? I think Carrie, before let's see, that's the 1st. Could we do an in-person meeting on the 1st? Then get back on our first would be to present back to you the revisions after bringing in John and Linda and others to, kind of get closer to this final community forum agenda for the housing part, and then kind of scratch and so present that, but also dive much deeper into the thoughts on tourism. And maybe by then you'll have your first meeting. Anne, does that sound like a reasonable proposal for all of us to meet in person 2 weeks from today? Hopefully it won't snow again. Good. Can that work? Because I think, we're going to have to cancel. You guys can hold it. We won't be available for the spring break one. Okay. Let's do that. Let's commit to meeting in person. Hopefully we can grab the library or some other place. We'll get back to you on that. John, Linda will be reaching out to you about this agenda and content. And then, Anne, let's also set up another time to have a little bit more discussion about what you're up to and kind of how things are going. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, great. I don't know, just quick comments on today's meeting before we offer some space for those that have joined us. The energy felt great to me. I'll just say that. Okay. I'll take silence as Wasn't bad.
I've commented
All right.
enough. It was a good meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Zach,
Silence is golden.
silence can be golden. We live in uncomfortable spaces sometimes.
Say one thing, the recording is really good because I had to miss last meeting, but I listened to it for 2 hours in a car, and it just, it's really important. So we just
No.
keep
We've
that
got
up.
half of it today. That was just a real bad blunder on our part. So chalk that up to just forgetting. So we won't do that again. Do our best. Yeah. And we will make sure that the notes are more detailed and be really clear to the public that there's both available, and just own the mistake. It happens. Oh, here we go. Photo of a restaurant yesterday. Closed. Kathy, Brian, Zach, now is the time to address any questions to the work group or to us, or to offer any thoughts for us. Share your observations, whatever you'd like.
Yeah, sure. I just jumped in halfway through the meeting. Just a reminder for everybody, I'm one of the sustainability coordinators for the city of Sedona. Yeah, as Cynthia just updated you all, Alicia Peck's no longer with us. We are looking, currently in the process for looking for a replacement for a sustainability manager. But in the meantime, I just want to make sure that our department is, still engaged in this process. How important this document is for the city and for all future work moving forward for the next 10 years. So yeah, I definitely want to be popping in here and contributing where we can.
I've been told my internet's a bit spotty. Brian or Kathy or Holly?
I actually
Happy
do
to
have-
jump in for just a second. I missed the bulk of the meeting, so sorry. I was on at the beginning and kind of catching the tail end here, but glad to hear that you all felt like it went well, and we'll try to catch up on the rest of it otherwise. So keep it up. Let's keep cranking away.
So I actually normally don't speak at all
Hi,
and say,
Kathy.
no, it's Holly. But I did want to, I did have a few thoughts about today's meeting, and I was here for the entire meeting. This issue about housing, to me, is the most difficult issue that we have. And I was at a luncheon a couple weeks ago with about 10, I'd say about 10 knowledgeable people in Sedona. And everything that you discussed earlier and through this meeting between Linda and Ann and others was discussed about housing. And people don't even identify that we have a problem. Some people do, but a lot of people don't. So my suggestion, I love the idea about having these vignettes with people talking about it, because frankly, I was shocked that there were so many people who have their own home and they think that's fine, I'm taken care of. And the rest of it is not a problem for me. And so I think we need a lot of community education. And I really do believe that it can get very contentious. It's very emotional. And so good facilitation is critical. And I really feel like it's important for council to hear what the community is thinking, more than just what we see on social media all the time. The other thing I would say about the project at Sunset Lofts, my understanding is slightly different from Cynthia, so I don't know who's got the current update, but they're seeking HUD funding, which takes a very, very long time to achieve. And they have not received it yet. And so they cannot begin the project without receiving the funding. Also,
interest rates have gone up dramatically since the project was conceived. And so the economics need to be looked at again. That doesn't mean there aren't ways to address that. I think the city is still, and the developer is still very committed to this project.
Thank you. Kathy?
I am grateful to Holly for, putting that additional information out there. I think that was important. Also, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be on fly on the wall for this. I think listening to all of you hashing this out is really helpful to me, as well as framing some questions and see how you want to frame things. But I want to caution maybe how we think about looking at properties such as Cultural Park Place or the Dells or the Biddles property or Sunset Lofts. I mean, I think it was said before by John, but no one property is, or probably should be, a solution to the myriad problems, and challenges that the city faces. I think properties need to be looked at, comprehensively. They all have multiple uses and multiple purposes, from protecting open space to preserving view corridors, to providing recreation, to providing housing, to providing arts and culture, to provide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So I just don't think, I just want to caution as we frame things, that thinking like the Dells is an answer to something, or that Cultural Park Place is an answer to something. I hear these things come up in the community more often. You guys have a much more well-rounded view, but I hear these things come up like these are the answers to problems, and they're not. They're pieces of a puzzle. And I just want to remind people of that. And again, I'm really grateful to have been able to listen into this. I do urge everybody, the link is in the chat, to look at the Morrison Institute publication, State Level Legal Barriers to Adopting Affordable Housing Policies in Arizona. Please get a hard copy or just download it on your computer. Go back in the chat and the link is there. Thank you, Jean, for that when I put in the question. It's just perspective always. It's always good to keep in mind when suggestions come up. Has that been looked at? What other information is out there that we need to consider before we go into something so far without having the background information? So that's my soapbox for the day. Thank you for your indulgence.
And Linda, your finger was up. You got a comment? Question? Oh, you're muted, Linda. You're muted.
All right, don't hang up. Don't hang up. We did talk about taking out an ad, a full page ad in the newspaper. And this could be a great opportunity to share the statistics, some information, the challenges about housing, like it can address some of the things that Holly brought up that people aren't aware. And it kind of like is a marketing and then an invitation to come to this group meeting. But it's a great way then across the board to get some true facts out there. Because we did talk about more education to the community in multiple ways. So I wanted to remind us that this might be a great way to use it.
Yeah. Are we able to, in our remaining minutes, look at some dates? Can we try to commit to this workshop we talked about a lot today? I think we proposed 28, 29, or 30 for the first one. And especially since we have for March 28, 29, or 30 for the Imagine with the housing emphasis. Are any of those nights better or worse than others in terms of council meetings and things like that?
They
Do we
all
know?
work for me.
Does anyone know the council meetings that week? Sometimes there's a Tuesday conflict we need to be aware of.
Yeah, the 28th is a council meeting.
Okay. Do we like the 29th? We had good luck on a Wednesday last time. Should we shoot for
The 29th is probably also a council meeting.
Okay. Do I hear the
But
3rd?
we start at 3 o'clock on Wednesdays.
That's
if it's-
true, but it
if it
can
was
sometimes
later.
go. It could go until 6, probably. So if you had something later than 6, that could work on a Wednesday.
We have an XYZ meeting on the 30th, but I haven't sent out the invites yet, so I can change that.
And I actually cannot do the 30th. I have a hard no on that one. The 28th was a council meeting. What time do the council meetings end? It depends, right? It's late.
Oh, no,
Uh,
not the 28th. The council meetings go till 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Sometimes they go
4:30.
24 hours.
Would we consider a Monday? The 27th? Would that work for all? Okay.
I mean,
No, not for you, Jeannie. Oh, here we go. Here we get into this trouble. Okay, well, when we run into this, what we do is do our best. Or a Friday. I don't think we.
We lost you there, Andy.
Yeah, you're getting choppy again.
We also have to look at the facility.
All right, why don't we,
Facility?
I wait and, but. Correct. Yeah, so why don't we right now, we'll do some work on our end and then we'll propose a couple, are we thinking 2 weeks apart or a week apart? Boom, boom, what do you think? 2 weeks? 2? I'm seeing some fingers, Mary's got 2. Okay, so we'll look at 2 weeks apart, late March, early April,
Mhm.
and we'll look at the Performing Arts Center and then we'll go from there. How's that sound? Okay.
Is it foolish to suggest that that the council meeting could be changed?
It can't be, it can't be changed, but I think Wednesday could work. I think what time were you planning to start it?
5.
I think we said 5:30 to 7.
Well, could you do 6 to 7:30? Is that,
No, because we need 2.5 hours, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
oh, 6 to 8 then?
Well, the council meetings are 3 to 5. Right.
Yeah, but
Theoretically,
they run over.
No.
They routinely run about 3 hours, even though it's slated for a 2-hour meeting.
Yeah,
Those
let's
workshops.
shoot for, I mean, I think we could decide right now too, and then our building isn't available as well. So let's take a look at 2 weeks apart in that time frame, and then we'll get back to you all, recognizing that there are a few dates that are not.
Yeah, but
good.
please do stay away from the Tuesday, definitely.
Got it.
Because that's just a real, okay.
Loud and clear.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks so much for all of your insights today. Really appreciate it. I feel like we moved along, so appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
bye.